So let's look at how a sample should be chosen, sampling how to sample well. And so in the rest of this video, we're going to just focus on one, and this is our kind of most basic, most popular, and I don't know, maybe most obvious sampling method, a simple random sample or simple random sampling. So this should say a simple random sample is chosen by chance, rules out both favoritism by the sampler and self-selection by the respondents. So this takes care of that convenient sampling. We might select individuals. If we choose ourselves, we might knowingly or unknowingly kind of impose some effect on the results to bias them in a certain way. And then if individuals self-select, it might be biased. So it takes all of that, all of that personal choice and just makes it impersonal chance. So that is the concept of random sampling, leaving it up to kind of fate to decide. And yeah, with chance, we know that there's the possibility things can go wrong, right? We can end up a little high or low, but we can deal with that, and we'll look at the methods of dealing that. The biggest thing we can do is get a really big sample size to kind of deal with the randomness unknown. And so we want to make sure we're doing randomness. So random sampling in general, so this is actually the more general term, random sampling, when we're using chance. We are going to specifically focus on the most simple of those, the simple random sample. And so the simple random sample, we get a size, and so we use the symbol n for our sample size, is chosen in such a way that every group of n individuals in the population has an equal chance of being selected as the sample. So basically we just take our entire list of individuals and randomly choose people, and we'll go through the whole process of doing that. But the way that we do it, every possible combination of n people should be equally likely in that method. We're not going to constrict it in any way. We're just going to completely get those. And so here's how that process works. Sometimes the process makes more sense looking at this. So how to do it, and this is focusing on with technology. We'll come back to another way to do this as well. So give each individual in the population, so we're going to label every individual in the population. We're going, and you'll sometimes need to be able to describe your sampling method, and so you actually will want to hit these steps. You'll want to go through, how are you going to label all of your individuals in your population? So give each individual in the population a distinct numerical label from 1 to n, where n is the number of individuals in the population. And so that step can be extremely hard. If we're trying to do a random sample of the entire United States, then that number, like that, the n is, yeah, by the way, capital N is the population size. But yeah, that number is incredibly large. It's hard to do. Ideally, we have some systems in place, like maybe everybody has a social security number, or if we're doing the entire school, that process even takes a while, but at least everybody already has a student ID number that we might use as a basis for that. So everybody needs a distinct, if we're going to do this with technology, a distinct numerical label, and then we randomize. So we can use a random number generator, or there's a few other ways, but yeah, with technology, it's usually going to be a random number generator to obtain n different integers from 1 to capital N, so that you're going to get the sample size, different numbers, and that's important, different, or unique numbers, so that needs to be stated when you're describing that you're going to not repeat. Your sample shouldn't have the same individual multiple times. So between 1 and n, it can actually be, maybe if you didn't start at 1, you can start at 0, or you can start at 1,000 if you want, depending on how you're labeling things. But a lot of times we just label them from 1 to capital N, where n is the sample size. So we get those unique numbers. There's computer random number generators online. There is the calculator command. So let me show you that real quick, just so you've at least seen that. Hopefully this calculator has enough battery. Where are you? Here we go. So it's under math, the math button, and then probability, PROB, and then rand int is the one we want. So random integer, and you kind of give it a range. So like I want numbers between 1 and 200. And then n is how many you want. If you leave it blank, it just does 1. And so this will give me a random number between 1 and 200. And there's other things in the command, but there's random number generator on the calculator. If you want to look at another way of doing this, it's a little weirder. But in your phone calculator, if you turn sideways, you'll have a little rand button here, so like that's in there. Now this one is weird. It does a number between, like it just does a decimal between 0 and 1. So you might have to multiply by like your range of values. So like if I go out of 200, so times, oh crap, I did times 2. All right, well, there's a random number between 1 and 2. But if we do random number times 200, that gives me 39, out of that 200, and then I can do, rand times 200, and okay, that one was 34, and well, those are kind of weirdly similar. Oh, times 200, and so you can do something like that and mess with it. And you can think about what's a little weird about that and how we might actually make it in. But there's different random number generators. You can find them online, things like that. All right, so once, and then this is part that people leave out on tests. So once you've, all right, so you generate the numbers. A lot of times people will say, oh, I'm going to label everybody in my population, and then I'm going to select the numbers. Then you, so you don't actually, the individuals aren't the numbers. And so people stop there, and it seems dumb, but you have to actually say, then I would choose the corresponding individuals. Like the AP test, you have to say that. Like, I would pick the individuals with that number label. So you're not sampling numbers, you're sampling people. And so you have to say, I would select the people corresponding to those numbers. And that's something you should be able to describe for like an AP question or one of my test questions. All right, how do you do this with the table? I think I gave you guys a little bit of a spoiler look at the table of random digits. So this is exciting. We're going to use the table of random digits now. So it starts out pretty much the same. Label every individual with a distinct numerical value. And you want to, in this, do choose as few digits as possible. This table is kind of an inefficient way. This really is the worst way of doing it. But every once in a while they refer to this on the AP test, and so you want to kind of know how this table of random digits things work. So you label every individual, and then you randomize. So the way you're going to do this, you're going to look at consecutive digits in that table of random digits. So just real quick to show you again. So here is your textbook. You've got those tables in the back. You can choose to use, where is it? So there's our z, t, chi-square, and our table of random digits. And so what you can do is, you could pick, you kind of haphazardly choose a row. Or I've seen sometimes you like take a pen or whatever and drop it, and just whatever it points at, that's where you start. Because you don't always want to start at the beginning of your random table because you'll always get the same random numbers. That's no good. But you kind of choose haphazardly or randomly-ish where to begin within the table. And then you go from there, but you read them in chunks. So you read those consecutive groups in chunks. So depending on how many digits you have, if you're dealing with 3-digit numbers, you're going to go in 3-digit chunks. And you might have to ignore some things. So if you have numbers between like 1 and 200, you might have to ignore. So you read like a 3-digit chunk. And if it says like 153, you use that number. But if it says like 257, you just like skip it. So you read across the line, ignore any group of digits that wasn't used as a label or that duplicates. So again, we need that unique, those different values. We can't be repeating those. So we ignore duplicates and then stop once we have n different and unique labels. And then finally, we have to say we select the people corresponding to those numbers. So this one, here's how that looks. So here we've got 28 individuals in our population. This is a fairly small population, and we're trying to choose a simple random sample of 4 hotels from that population. And we're going to use this line from the table of random digits. And so they group them in groups of 5. It gets kind of easier to keep your place and count out and things like that. So the first thing that we do, so we've labeled all of our individuals. Now we're going to go 2 digits at a time. Since I used a 2-digit number, 28, and we went from 0, 1. You could theoretically start from 0, 0. But yeah, that's kind of weird. You can also do things where you're like, oh, well, 0, 0 represents 100. If you have 100 individuals, you can do things like that. There's, as long as you define it, it's fine. If the randomness makes sense. So we break these into 2-digit chunks. So if you kind of slice this up between the 69 and the 05, and then the 16, you bridge that gap, and then the 48, we're going to take these 2 digits at a time and split it up into 2-digit chunks. And so that's going to kind of start forming our sample, but we're going to ignore a bunch of values. We ignore the 69 because it's too big. And so then the first individual we choose is 5. 5, and so we select that corresponding, these are hotels that we're choosing. Beach Castle gets selected. And then 16 is good, so we choose the Radisson. And then we skip 48, it's no good. 17 is good, we choose the Ramada. And then 87 is too big. Well, then here comes another 17 we can't use. And then there's other high number, another 17 we can't use because we already selected the Ramada, so make sure we skip all those, skip a bunch of those, and then finally 20 is our last one, and we select Hotel 20 and choose that. So our simple random sample ends up being those 4 hotels. And so that is the most basic form of random sampling, kind of the most common that we'll talk about a lot. There are some other ones that we will get into in the next video.